Hello, welcome to another weekly update. Welcome to the first weekly update of 2020. Happy New Year. I hope you had a good holiday. Whether you're back at work now or whether you go back after this weekend, I hope you're looking forward to 2020. So, not that much happened since last week, predictably, because of the holiday season, but it gave me a chance to write at least one of the blog posts I've been meaning to write for a little while, so we can talk about that, and then also some interesting things I've noticed on the Microsoft 365 roadmap. Okay, so the first thing to go through is a blog post I wrote this week about webhooks in Microsoft Teams. So, webhooks are interesting. So, they're not new to Graph. Graph already has support for webhooks, or subscriptions as they sometimes call them, in Graph, but for a limited number of workloads. And so this is the first time they've been available for Teams-based workloads. So so it's really good to see this happening. This is a different way to consume Graph data. It makes more sense to certain workloads. If you don't know what a webhook is, then I put something in the blog post to kind of go through a couple of paragraphs that really explain the problem they're solving and why they're interesting. And then I go through the webhooks that are available today. And these are things that you can use right now today. They're not coming, they actually work. The documentation is not quite there. They are super new. When they come, they're going to be in beta. So all those disclaimers. By the time you watch this, the documentation may well be live actually. But for now, you can actually follow the blog post I've got. All that stuff works. I've kind of pulled it together from some Ignite sessions and some GitHub data and information in GitHub as well. So it's kind of pulled together into one blog post here. But you can use it to go and create a subscription to get information about things happening in Teams. So I've got the blog post covers all the permissions you need, the calls you need to make, some code samples as well. There's some interesting gotchas in there that I talk through, the most notable being the subscription length, which is limited to 60 minutes, not the standard 3 days. If you do anything else with Graph subscriptions, you'll know the max default is 3 days. It's not the end of the world, it's not a problem. You can renew those subscriptions, it's just a thing to be aware of. And then there's an interesting way you can use these subscriptions to have the actual data that you care about returned in the notification, not just a reference, not just a pointer to go and get the real data. You can actually have the real data returned to you. It's a bit more complicated because you need to do some stuff with certificates to enable that to happen, but you can absolutely do it if you want to. So that's kind of that's interesting. So I think keep an eye on this. It's going to be interesting to see throughout 2020 whether more webhooks come along and what people do with them. I'm quite excited by them. I think it's quite a good way because it ties very nicely into the serverless architecture. So it's very easy to create subscriptions to things happening and then have microservices react to them rather than having this big kind of complicated, long-running polling process to kind of get the data you need. So I think that's cool. Okay, so a couple of other things just quickly that I've noticed happening. So this is taken kind of from the Microsoft 365 roadmap, and so that's always kind of a good indicator of things that are happening or things that are coming. And so it's not like a perfect science because they are just forecasts, they are just predictions, but sometimes it's useful. And the first one is this Teams Outlook email integration. So this was talked about at Ignite actually. So it's good to see it in the roadmap. It actually went into the roadmap probably about a month ago now. So it's what this is kind of different and new ways for Outlook and Teams to work better together. So if you're receiving information in Outlook but you want to reply in Teams, easy ways to make that happen. So specifically the features that are coming are the ability to share an email to Teams. So from your Outlook, to be able to take that email, including its attachments, and take it into a channel or a chat in Teams. The next one is to share a conversation via email. So from within Teams, if you then want to email that whole conversation without leaving Teams, so you'll be able to send an email from within Teams Yep, without leaving Teams. So that's quite interesting. So if you've got people that are not yet in Teams, or you've got people outside your organisation, or for whatever reason it's just easier to send a email, that's a thing you'll be able to do. But you'll be able to do it from within Teams. So that's quite interesting. And then finally, the ability to, so you know the missed activity emails you get, that you might get via email to say there's things happening in Teams you're missing out, and then it lists those things. You'll be able to see those messages and respond to them from within Outlook. So this is kind of really interesting, and I think probably, and this is a big guess on my part, this is not written into the roadmap, this is my guess, that we'll start to see some of the fluid stuff, the fluid framework stuff that was shown and demoed and talked about at Ignite this year, or last year now, that enables this kind of rich functionality within Outlook. It might be that, it might just be adaptive cards, but it'll be interesting to see what that looks like when it comes. The other interesting thing on the roadmap that I will bring to your attention is the ability for you to now, if you're in GCC High, so one of the government clouds, the high one, you can now add a website tab in Teams. That's something you've not been able to do before. So for developers, either normally inside those organizations, but possibly for third-party app developers, just know that that having the ability to add website tabs is a function now in Teams. It's a thing that you can now do in GCC High. It's a user feature. It's a thing that users do. They can kind of add a website into the tab. That stuff is still rolling out, actually. So it's not kind of there yet. Its status at the moment is rolling out. And I forgot to say actually on the last one around the Teams Outlook email integration, that status is currently in development. So it's not there yet, but it is coming. There is a release date on it of January 2020. So we'll see. That may happen. It may slip. It's just a prediction. So it's not it's not concrete. All right, so that's kind of everything. Everything from me. By the way, if you're interested in how I'm getting these updates to the roadmap and things that are happening in the roadmap, I did a blog post about this a while ago. I'll put a link to in the notes in the description for this, because you can actually filter the Microsoft 365 roadmap to get very specific and detailed RSS feeds for the things you care about. So I have an RSS feed for Teams in development. So as soon as something in Microsoft Teams goes into status of in development, it shows up on my RSS reader. So if that's interesting to you, I've got a blog post about how I did that. It's a service I've kind of put together. I'm giving out free for everyone. So if that's useful, feel free to use it. Other than that, I think let's all get back to work and wait to see all the new announcements in the next week, and have a great weekend, and I will speak to you again next week.